Hello! So today's topic is self-worth. And my name is Kamalyn Kaur. I'm a CBT therapist, personal development coach, and a self-appointed ambassador for Scotland for all hot water bottles. So I thought I would just make that clear, and I hope everybody's got theirs today as well. And what I'm going to be doing this week is looking at redefining and rebuilding self-worth. So what we're going to be doing today is what does it mean? How do we determine self-worth? How do we redefine it? What actually is self-worth? The self-worth is one of the most important things, but I feel there's a lot of confusion around it, so we need to clear that up today as well. So self-worth. So what is self-worth? Self-worth ultimately is your relationship with yourself. If you had to summarize it in a nutshell, that is basically what self-worth is. Your self-worth is the core of you. It is your identity. It is your internal compass in life. It guides you in life. And it is your gravitational pull in life. Your self-worth determines what, how, and who in your life. It determines what happens, it determines how it happens, and it also determines who you choose to let stay in your life. Because a lot of people get hung up on this. Oh my God, I keep attracting the wrong person, blah, 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 blah. No, the question is not why you keep attracting the wrong person. The question is, why are you letting that wrong person stay in your life? That is the question. And the answer to that is self-worth. So if we can crack this nut this week, then everything else starts to fall into place. Obviously, it's not as simple as that, but it's a starting point, okay? So that is basically, in a nutshell, what self-worth is. Self-worth is not the same as self-esteem, and it is not the same as self-confidence. It's really important for me to point this out. A lot of people get mixed up, and if we are getting mixed up with these things, then how can we get to the bottom of the problem? So the first thing I'm going to do is define the difference between them. So self-confidence is about your skills, it's about your abilities, it's about your competencies, and it is about a specific skill set that you have in your life. That's what confidence is about. So if you're confident in something, it's not going to be about your self-worth. That's going to be about skills, about competencies, about your abilities, about your skill set. That's what we're talking about, okay? Self-esteem is about how you think about yourself, how you feel about yourself, and what you believe about yourself as well. So it's more about appearance. That's what it's about. So self-esteem is more about appearance. It's about weight. It's about height. It's about the way you look. It's the way you want to look. It's the way you want to be. That's basically what it's actually about. So this is the difference between self-esteem and self-confidence. So bear that in mind and don't get it mixed up with self-worth. Now, self-worth, if we need to define it, like I said, it's your relationship with yourself. But if you want to go a little bit deeper, self-worth is about valuing yourself enough to believe and know that you are a good enough person and deserve to be treated with respect. I know that's a bit of a mouthful, but I'm going to say it again, just so it cements, right? So self-worth is about valuing yourself enough to know and believe that you're a good enough person and deserve to be treated with respect despite external influences or external factors. That's basically what self-worth is about. So that's us. Managed to clear up self-worth, okay? So this is where we now need to start being able to differentiate it. And it is possible for somebody to have low self-esteem, low self-confidence, but high self-worth. But it's also possible for somebody to have high self-esteem, high self-confidence, but have low self-worth as well, okay? So this is where it's important to be able to start doing them. So how do we determine our self-worth? Now, this is obviously not concrete. And this is not how self-worth should be determined, but this is how we do it in life. This is how society makes us determine our self-worth. And there's 8 key areas that we can determine this self-worth in. Okay, so the first key area that we use to determine our self-worth is approval. Approval, and by that I mean validation, appraisal, recognition, and it's about acknowledgement. That's what actually it's about. Now, obviously, all of us like to be acknowledged, and all of us like to be appraised and kind of acknowledged for what we do as well, but this is different. This is where you could have everything going for you, but you still feel that you're not good enough because maybe you're looking for that approval from one particular person in your life. That person could be your mother, it could be your father, it could be your partner, it could be a boss, it could be a work colleague, and all of your self-worth as an individual is placed on the approval, appraisal, and acknowledgement from this one person or from other persons. So that's basically one of the ways that we can determine self-worth. The second way we determine self-worth is physical appearance. And usually, and I'll say this, it's around weight and scales and numbers and trying to be a certain dress size or certain scale number on the scale or a certain weight. And this is basically how we start to measure our self-worth. So if the scale says we are X amount, then that's great, but if the scale says we are 1 pound heavier, then we will have a really rubbish day for the rest of the day. So this is basically the physical appearance side. Now obviously that's weight we're talking about. There's lots of other things as well, just about in terms of looks, how we can judge ourselves based on appearance and then determine our self-worth. The third thing is academic competency. So what I mean by that is qualifications. It could be about your grades, it could be about what you've achieved in terms of in your school life or at uni, and you see that where people constantly study and study and study, right? And there's one thing where you do it because you enjoy doing it, but for a lot of people, their self-worth as a person is attached into constantly studying. They never apply it in life, but they constantly keep studying and studying and studying, because if they weren't doing that, they wouldn't know who they were. They wouldn't have an identity. They wouldn't know what to talk about. They wouldn't feel important. They wouldn't feel as valued as a person. So the third thing is academic competency. So the fourth thing is your career. So people determine their self-worth based on what job they have, or if they even have a job, what they do, what they're actually doing in their careers, what their job title is. And I see this time and time again when I get referrals from people in terms of from employers or management referrals. A lot of the time it's things like restructuring, or people being promoted over other people, or people not getting a promotion, or people's job title not reflecting on what they actually do, or people not getting paid what they feel they should be getting paid in their job, or people not progressing the way they want to. And the impact that it has on their health and well-being, their emotional health and well-being, is phenomenal. That is enough to affect every other area of their life. So this is how we start to use a career to determine our self-worth. And this is why a lot of people get stressed out when they start getting to their golden years and they're ready to retire, because a lot of people attach their self-worth to their job. So if I'm not working, who am I? And a lot of the time when I'm working with people that are off on sickness and absence, it's not that being off, it's about, I don't know who I am when I'm not working, and there's this urgency and this rush to get back to work. And you can see it where it's all tied up into the self-worth. So the career is the fourth area. The fifth area is net worth. Now, what I mean by that is it means your income, what you're earning, material possessions, what you have to your name, whether you have a property to your name, whether you have businesses to your names, whether you have a certain amount of money coming in, whether you have a certain amount of income coming in. All of these things determine the self-worth. Well, they don't determine the self-worth, but that's what we think can determine the self-worth. Okay? The sixth thing is who you know and your social circle as well. Now, a lot of people, what this means is it means status and being around influential people. Some people can determine their self-worth based on who they're hanging around with. If they're hanging around with important people, prestigious people, people with status, economic status, and societal status, then they start to feel better within themselves. And if they're not, then this easily can drop as well. So that's what I mean about the social circle and who you're hanging around with. The other thing is comparing ourselves to other people. And we've all done it at some point. We're all guilty of doing that. But when your self-worth is attached to that particular thing, it almost becomes an obsession where you will not accept anything good in your life and you will not accept anything positive happening in your life unless you have matched this particular person or superseded them or gone beyond what they've actually achieved. So this is where comparing ourselves to others, and this happens a lot of the time in siblings and family homes. Parents compare siblings against one another, and nowadays in the last, I would say, 10 years or so, it's become a bigger phenomenon, this comparison, because of social media and all the external factors that we have to deal with as well. And it is really sad. I actually feel sorry for this new generation of children that are growing up, because their entire self-worth is attached to this virtual reality out there where they think everything should be a certain way, and it's not anywhere close to reality at all. So that's your seventh thing. And your eighth thing is competing and outdoing other people. That's basically what it is. So what you do is you feel like you have to be constant competition with other people, whether those other people are certain family members, it could be friends, it could be work colleagues, and you see that sometimes in friend circles as well, where people are competing with one another. If one person's in a relationship, the other person needs to be in a relationship. If one person's got bought something, the other person has to buy it. And if you're in that kind of a friendship, you need to get out. That's not healthy. You should not be competing with one another. And that is basically one other way of comparing ourselves and affecting our self-worth. So those are the 8 key areas in our life that we use to determine self-worth. And if you come from a brown family or a black family, then you're literally screwed, because you will be judged using all of those 8 criteria. Not 1, not 2, not a few. Your measure and your self-worth as a person will be measured using all of those 8 criteria. And I'm not even joking about that. So those are your 8 key areas in life that people will use to measure their self-worth. That's basically the key areas that we can narrow it down to. Now, I guess at this point, it would be good for you to think about, like, which of those 8 areas do you fall into? How are you measuring your self-worth? Where do you attach your self-worth to? And where does that attachment come from? Who placed that attachment in your life? Who measured your self-worth based on your job, your status, your income, how good you were, whether you were matching up to your brother or sister, whether you were matching up to the neighbor's son? Who done that to you? Because this is where you now need to start moving back the way into your life and identifying, where did this actually come from? Okay, so far we've looked at self-esteem, self-confidence and self-worth, how they're different. We've looked at the 8 key areas in our life that we use, that it's not concrete, but we use to determine our self-worth. Now let me give you a couple of examples, and these examples are important because just so that it puts what the definitions I was given about self-esteem, self-worth and self-confidence, just so it can help you differentiate between them. Now earlier on I said that you can have low self-worth but still be high in confidence and high in self-esteem. Now let me explain that to you, okay? So let's say, for example, somebody might like the way that they look. Okay, they might be absolutely fine. They might look like a supermodel. They know they look like a supermodel and they behave like a supermodel, but because their self-worth is so low, they will stay in a relationship that does not treat them well. Okay, so they will stay in a relationship that is toxic, that is unhealthy, that is controlling, or it can be abusive. That's basically what starts to happen. So you can see where the self-esteem is high, But because the low self-worth, then the self-worth is about how we allow people to treat us and what we believe we deserve to be treated like. So you can see where if the self-worth is low, despite how much you like the way you look, you will still allow somebody to treat you in a negative way or an unhealthy or an unhappy way. Okay? The other thing is, somebody could be successful in their career, somebody could be a high achiever, could have all the achievements and all the success in the world, but their self-worth is kind of tied up in the approval from their mum or their dad. And until they get that, they constantly carry this belief that they are not good enough. So there's an example of somebody being confident in their job, obviously competent in their job as well, and capable. So that is all sitting really, really high, but the self-worth is low because you have attached your self-worth to approval from other people, and those people being your parents or somebody else. And because that's not happened, then you don't feel you're good enough as a person. Okay? On the same token, right, you could have somebody that has got a really, really good job, somebody that's happy with the way that they look, happy with the way that they feel, but because their self-worth is attached to a relationship status, they are not happy because they're not in a relationship. So they feel and believe that they are not good enough as a person, despite how they look, despite them being happy with what they see in the mirror, despite them being happy with their achievements and everything they've set up in their lives and everything they've worked towards, they will still believe to the core of them that they're not a good enough person because they are not in a relationship, because they are not married, because they do not have children. So there is an example of somebody with high self-esteem, high self-confidence, but low self-worth. On the same token, you could have somebody that is maybe not happy with the way that they look, not really that happy in life, maybe just bobbing along, not meeting any targets or achievements that they want or goals, but and that's an example of low self-esteem and low self-confidence, but they have high self-worth. Okay, so this person does not determine their happiness based on what job they're doing or what relationship they're in or what they look like. And this is the person that will enter a relationship, and even though they're not 100% happy with themselves and they know they could be doing better in their job and they know they could maybe look a little bit better, and I know I keep talking about looks, but that's the only example I can give when it comes to self-esteem, and they might look a little bit better and they think, oh yeah, I could maybe take care of myself a little bit. But this person is the person that if they have high self-worth, they will walk out of an unhealthy, toxic or abusive relationship. So you can see where out of self-esteem, self-confidence and self-worth, how your self-worth is your gravitational pull. The other two do not have as much of an impact as your self-worth. Okay, and I hope that's cleared things up. I know I gave such silly examples, but that's the only ones I could think of. So that is basically the difference between self-worth, the impact, the difference between self-worth, self-confidence, self-esteem, and also how it can impact us on a day-to-day basis and how it shows up in our life. And it's important to know that these criteria that we use to measure our self-worth, it's not real. It's a society-based scale. Your self-worth is not your to-do list. It is not what you achieve in the day. It is not how much money you earn, as long as what you earn is enough for you. Your job title, your career does not determine whether you are good enough to be treated with respect or love. So that is not your self-worth. Your self-worth is not your relationship status, whether you're single, married, separated, divorced, or widowed. You deserve to be treated with just as much respect and value as anybody else. And this is where these scales that we use, they're society-based, but they're not actually how we should be determining our self-worth. Our self-worth is not our age. And you hear this where people go, no, I'm too old to do that now, or I'm too young to do that, or I got offered a promotion, but I'm going to say no because I don't feel qualified for that, or I want to try this out in my life, but I feel like I've maybe passed that stage in my life. No, age is just a number, and who actually says you're too old or too young? So again, can you see where we've attached our self-worth to an age? And our self-worth is definitely not our social circles, and it's not the bank balance, and it's not what is actually in our bank accounts as well. So if that is not self-worth, if the things that I measured are actually societal scales, but they're not actually true scales that we can measure our self-worth with, then what actually is self-worth? What is self-worth? What is your self-worth if we are not using that scale? Now, I know it seems hard to imagine to even measure yourself without that scale, because we're so attached to that scale. We actually don't know how to measure ourselves without that scale. But let me ask you this question. When a baby enters the world, right, this tiny, tiny little baby, right, that baby has nothing. That baby doesn't fit any of those 8 criteria that I listed. It doesn't have a job, it doesn't have a career, it doesn't have an income, it doesn't have a friend circle, it doesn't have a social status on social media yet. It doesn't have any of those things, yet it is the most valuable little thing to us all in that moment. It is so valuable, and we treat that little baby with enough care, love, and respect that we can give it. So what is that inside us that can extend that compassion and kindness and love to that child? And what it is unconditional love. It's acceptance. It is accepting that little baby in its entirety without attaching any conditions on it, and also without any judgment. So where is it down the line of our life that we forget to do that, and we start placing certain attachments of self-worth on this child? Where is it along that line that we start introducing that scale of self-worth and start measuring whether we are good enough as a person depending on those 8 criteria in our life? There is somewhere where that goes a little bit wrong. But if we can reconnect with ourselves the way we connect with a child, and this is when we talk about in therapy inner child work, that's what it actually is about. If we can connect with ourselves the way we connect with a child, this is where we start to shed that scale of and that skin of self-worth that we have attached to that scale. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so there's a few things you need to actually now start asking yourself. So out of those 8 criteria that we use to measure our self-worth, the ones that we listed, that is not how our self-worth should be measured, but that is exactly how we do it in society. Okay, now imagine, so think about what you attach your self-worth to. Okay, now imagine that thing was taken away. Okay, your job or your relationship status or your income or your money or your job title or your net worth or your whatever it is, right? It gets taken away. So it's just you. It's just me, myself, and I. Okay, think about that. Think about how it would feel. Think about how would you measure your self-worth in that moment? What do you have of value to give to other people in that moment if you don't have that scale of self-worth to measure yourself against? Think about what is it that you have to offer. Now, the more you think about this, the more you start to reconnect with yourself as a person rather than the things that you can give. That's basically what starts to happen. And we want to now start getting to a point where we now need to remember and we need to acknowledge and we need to accept, right, that our self-worth, irrespective of what our external possessions actually are or our external factors are, that our self-worth is based from in here and not from external factors. Because as soon as we are able to detach from that, then no one and nothing and no circumstances in our life can make us feel bad or not good enough, cannot make us feel like a failure, cannot make us feel unsuccessful, cannot make us feel worthless as well. I hope this has been helpful. And I hope people can maybe relate to some of what I've said and take something good from it. And tomorrow, if you want to understand why you behave in certain ways in relationships and why the same patterns keep coming up in relationships, tomorrow is the session to book into and to tune into, because that's what we're going to be looking at tomorrow. We're going to be looking at the origins of our self-worth. Okay, so on that note, I'm going to love yous all and leave yous, and I'll be back soon with my hot water bottle and back with another session on self-worth. Okay, bye.